Guitar players, today I wanted to make an interesting video, and this is going to be the first in like a 5-part series of videos, okay? I tried to put them all into one, but it was just way too long. So this is going to be the first in a series of videos of what you don't need to know to play jazz, okay? A little bit of backstory. I started playing maybe around like 2003, 2004, so about 22 years, okay? And when I first started out, I wanted to play jazz. I wanted to be a proficient jazz player. And there were all these books and teachers and so forth that were telling me all these things that I needed to know. And it was just too much. It was just crazy. There was just this torrent of things you had to know to play jazz. I had no idea where to begin. I had no idea how to go about constructing a regimented practice schedule for any of this stuff. It was just, a lot of it just was a mystery to me, and it remained a mystery until I developed a very comprehensive understanding of all of how jazz works, and I went to a nice school, the new school, okay? So the very first thing that I want to tell you that you do not need to play jazz is the melodic minor scale, okay? Now, before I get too far into this, I do want to tell you that I want to be very careful about what I say here. I don't want to say that the melodic minor scale is useless. Okay, there are a couple of uses for it. However, just like at the beginning of the Mortal Kombat arcade game, it has this thing that says like, there is no knowledge that is not power. And yeah, that's true. All knowledge is power. However, not all knowledge is equally as valuable as other knowledge, okay? And the melodic minor scale is not as useful as people think. I have never spent any time really practicing the melodic minor scale. You know, the only time where I practice melodic minor scales? When I need to practice for an audition and I knew that that was going to be on the audition. That's it. Aside from that, in real life, you never use it. Now, there is one use of this scale, okay? And that is for the Lydian Dominant sound, okay? Lydian Dominant is whenever you're playing a dominant 7 sharp 11, or we just did take the A train, so let's do this one. D7 sharp 11, okay? So like take the A train, that sound, okay? Now, it's a very, very common sound in real jazz. When I say real jazz, I'm talking like the repertoire, okay? The Rodgers and Hart songbook and like blues standards and rhythm changes, that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about like post-1960 jazz. I'm not talking about that chromatic cocaine jazz in the 80s that everybody was playing, okay? I'm talking about the old school repertoire, all right? So it has one very practical use, and that is over a dominant 7 sharp 11 chord. Now, aside from Take the A Train, there's a lot of jazz songs that use this. There's a 2-7 sharp 11, okay? And I say 2-7 because it's almost always the 2 chord, all right? So Cherokee has it. There Will Never Be Another You has it. The 2nd chord in Girl from Ipanema, all right? So it is useful, and you do need to know what pitch collection to use over that. However, I never practiced melodic minor to learn that sound. Do you know why? It's because if all that it is just one altered note, then why do I need to think and practice a completely new set of scales just to get that down? It's like, I know what a D Mixolydian is. And if you're telling me like, oh, just do that, but make it a sharp 11, sharp 4, be like, okay, no problem. Okay, that is not as hard as you think. If you know the Mixolydian scale, which is derived from the major scale, then it's not as hard as you think to just say like, oh, play the same thing but with a sharp 11, especially when you're improvising, okay? When you're improvising, all that you need to do is, all jazz musicians kind of already know that the 4th degree of a scale is always treated very, very, very carefully. That's one of the first things that you learn, okay? And in this case, the sharp 11, it's a very, very hip note, okay? You do want to be able to use it in all of your lines. However, I'm just trying to say, I never practiced the jazz melodic minor scale. You don't need it. There's a couple of cool sounds that come out of the jazz melodic minor, such as Lydian Augmented, that's another one, okay, which is basically a major scale with a sharp 11 and a sharp 5. But come on, how many actual jazz songs really use that? You know, like Wayne Shorter's Juju is the only one that I think, and if you want to add that song into your repertoire, then you just spend a couple of weeks shedding the Lydian Augmented sound, and then you will have a trick bag for that sound, okay? Same thing with the altered scale. The altered scale is based on melodic minor. However, the altered scale is not used as often as people think, okay? The altered scale goes with a very, very specific chord, which is a dominant 7 alt, okay? Such as the first chord in Wayne Shorter's ESP. Wayne Shorter, again, I mean, one of the more harmonically advanced composers of the last, 50 years, right? But these are not commonly used in regular old jazz standards. Songs like Body and Soul, or like, Stablemates, or any of those cool, Alone Together, all right? Those songs all use kind of basic chords, just major, minor, and dominant, all right? And you don't need melodic minor, period. I'm tired of guys out there like doing all this arpeggiation and up and down the neck. I never did that. Okay, and you don't need to do it either to play jazz. So that's it for part 1, okay, which is don't bother practicing the melodic minor up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay, learn what practical application that scale has and learn what modes are derived from that, and then just practice that mode. I'm telling you, the only scale with practical application that is derived from melodic minor is that Lydian dominant sound. And that even really only happens once in a while, but it is necessary. And when you get there, think of it more like a Mixolydian with a sharp 4 or sharp 11. Don't bother with jazz melodic minor. That's it for part 1, okay? I'm sure that I'm gonna ruffle a few feathers. I got 4 more videos to come. And as always, if you wanna do a lesson, hit me up. Peace.